Kumdot Muvak, Nya Kelly and Mulik. Greetings, my name is Kelly, Dan Yipnaush Luis.
Shamai Chuig, Anya Napchugig Luis. Greetings, my name is Luis, and welcome to our All Piipaash Living Languages series, New Words.
In previous videos, Luis, we discussed some of the ways that Autumn and Piipaash create new nouns from existing verbs. In this episode, we will be exploring another way Piipaash uses existing verbs to create new nouns, or something that acts like a noun.
What do you mean when you say acts like a noun?
You're the linguist, Luis, so let me describe how it works and maybe you can provide a more technical description of what I'm describing.
Sure, I'll give it a shot.
Piipaash has a prefix kwa, written as kw, that can turn a verb into a noun or something noun-like. For example, the Piipaash verb tork means to turn, roll, or rotate. If we're converting this verb into a noun, we'd first get rid of the verb suffix k, then we're left with the verb root, tor. You can now add the kwa prefix, and you have kwator, which means wheel, but literally it means something which turns or rolls.
That's interesting. Your English translation, something which turns or rolls, provides a clue that this is a relative clause, where the kwa prefix is a relative clause marker.
Can you explain to us what a relative clause is?
Sure. Relative clauses are phrases that modify or describe a noun. In English, they are often created by using a relative pronoun, such as who, which, or that. Looking at the English translation, something which turns or rolls, we can identify the noun and the relative clause that describes it. The word something is our noun, and on its own we don't know much about it. But if we add the relative clause, in this case, which turns or rolls, it gives more information to describe that object.
I see.
Do qua prefix words always translate into full phrases in English? Can you give us a few more examples?
Sure. In Piipaash, we call a person who belongs to one of the Plains tribes, such as Lakota, Xpa Kwanyal. Xpa means eagle, and Yaalk is a verb that means to wear something. Again, the verb suffix k is dropped, and the qua prefix is added. So, Xpa Kwanyal literally means one who wears eagles. This is in reference to the elaborate headdresses they wear.
Didn't Piipaash also wear feathered headdresses?
Yes, in the old days, most Piipaash men wore a down feather in their hair, and some warriors wore a feathered headdress, but they weren't as elaborate as those of the Plains tribes.
Ah, I see. Getting back to the word, you stated that this literally means one who wears eagles. The qua prefix is definitely a relative clause marker and acts like the relative pronoun who in English.
Yes, that's what I meant when I said qua can change a verb into something that acts like a noun. I guess I should have said that qua can create a relative clause.
That's technically correct, but your description of something that acts like a noun is actually pretty accurate and one most people would understand. Does the qua prefix also work with Piipaash stative verbs?
What do you mean by stative verbs?
It's my understanding that Piipaash has verbs that describe actions, but it also has stative verbs that describe color, size, or some other state of being.
Yes, you're correct. In English, words describing color, size, or some other descriptive attribute are usually adjectives. They can be adjectives in Piipaash as well, but more often they're verbs. And to answer your question, yes, the qua prefix works on these types of verbs as well. Let's consider what we call South Mountain. In Piipaash, we call it vi kuchas. Vi means mountain, but the second part is derived from the stative verb chasam, which means to be greasy. Here, the final verb suffix m is dropped, and prefix qua is added, so vi kuchas accurately means the mountain that is greasy, or more simply, greasy mountain.
That's really interesting. It seems that qua is a relative clause marker, but at the same time, the words that are formed with qua are not interpreted as a relative clause, but are instead actual nouns. In this sense, vi kuchas is a proper noun and the name of the mountain, correct?
Yes, it's the name of the mountain, just like vi kuet is the name of Red Mountain.
Hold on just a minute. You said the name of Red Mountain is vi kuchet, right?
Yes, vi means mountain, and huetum is a verb that means to be red.
But this word doesn't seem to have qua as a prefix. There's just the ka at the beginning of the word.
That's right. With some words, the qua prefix is shortened to ka.
Why is it sometimes shortened?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I have a clear answer, though. It mostly happens to make pronunciation easier. With some words, k just flows better than qu. It just depends on the following sound. I'm sure there's a rule or a consistent pattern, but I'm not sure what it is. I just know when it feels right to use one or the other.
That's something we'll eventually have to figure out so we can make it easier for learners to know when to use one or the other.
I agree. Another example of a shortened qu is with the word vakpal. This is what we call the city of Phoenix, or it could be used for any city. Va means house, and palk is a verb that means to be many. So the literal translation is that which has many houses, or simply many houses. I hate to make it seem more complicated, but there's also another variation of the qu prefix. Sometimes qu presents itself as ku.
Do you have an example of this?
The Piipaash word for bus is piipaakupai. Pipa means person or people. The verb paik means to carry. Piipaakupai means that which carries people. That's what we call a bus.
Despite its variations, the qu prefix seems like a pretty straightforward way of creating new nouns in Piipaash. I noticed that some of these new words are also compounded, meaning the new word is created using two or more existing words.
Yes, I'd agree that many new nouns derived from the qu prefix also seem to be compound words, but not always.
Can we end this episode by sharing a few more examples of Piipaash words using the qu prefix and its variations?
Absolutely. Let's start with some single word examples. From the verb shmak, to dream, we have kushma, the noun for dream or dreamer. In this case, it could be interpreted as that which is dreamed or one who dreams. In Piipaash, an angel is maikwadi. Mai means sky or heaven. The verb dik means to come, so the literal translation is one that comes from heaven. Many people leave the verb suffix on this word for some reason and say maikwadik. Both versions are correct. In Piipaash, a preacher is Yos Kwakanav. Yos is the modern word for God, from Spanish Dios. The verb kanav means to tell or to tell about, so the literal translation is one who tells about God. The word for morning star is chamsheh kuftay. Chamsheh means star. The verb vataya means to be big. Chamsheh kuftay literally means star that is big. The word for Colorado River is chakwet. Cha means water. The verb chwetum means to be red. Chakwet literally means water that is red. Before the Colorado River was dammed, it had a reddish color because of the high content of silt. That's why it was called chakwet.
For those who may not know, Colorado also means red in Spanish.
I'm sure it was named that in Spanish for the same reason. The Spanish explored the Colorado River long before it was dammed. Well, I think that about wraps up this episode of Living Languages, New Words. To summarize what we've learned today, in Piipaash, the qu prefix can be added to a verb stem to create a new noun or relative clause. On some words, the qu prefix can be ku or just k. If you can think of any other Piipaash nouns that are formed using the qu prefix, write them in the comment section.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Living Languages, New Words. Tune in for more episodes. Do wałapomniej.
Yun ka.